Good morning, everyone. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm a member of the St. Joan of Arc Speaker Selection Committee. And it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce our guest speaker this morning, R.T. Rybak. Now, most of you know R.T. as our former mayor, that guy with endless energy who seemed to be everywhere in our city, working to make it a better place for all of us. He led efforts to revitalize North Minneapolis, attack juvenile crime, make Minneapolis a wireless city, end homelessness in 10 years, and significantly reduce the city's energy consumption to combat global climate change. And I can assure you that since leaving office, he has not slowed down a single bit. In January of 2014, RT became Executive Director of Generation Next. In his current role, he aims to make Minneapolis and St. Paul a national leader in innovative, cradle-to-career approaches to youth development, and he works to highlight the crisis of our region's achievement gap and to advance effective strategies for ending it. Please join me in welcoming former Mayor Rybak as he shares his thoughts on faith and tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a tremendous honor to be here, and thank you, John, who's done so much in this community. It's a real honor to be here because, as I said at 9, and I didn't change my thought since 11, it is right here that is ground zero for compassion in this community. I think it's very true that this is not a city that has ever been powered by politicians. There have been some good ones, some bad ones, a lot in the middle, but the fact of the matter is we have always had a remarkable civic community. People who do their work and then make it their work to do more. And that is true on so many levels, but there is really, I don't believe, almost any community in this city that has been more about justice and equity and faith in the city as Joan of Arc. And I know that when there have been people who needed a home, when there have been people who needed help with diseases that people were only beginning to understand or care about, when there has been war, any issue, when I was ever in the mayor's office and we needed people of compassion to step forward, I would always say, start at Joan of Arc. And the beautiful thing is that you have never given that up, including this great presentation I just saw here. Thank you, Joan of Arc, for being an amazing part of the city's institution. Thank you. And it would be nice if I simply said that and walk away, but I want to ask you to engage in another battle, okay? You're not done yet, and neither am I, okay? And I want us to think about that battle by just in our mind's eye going to a playground, and you see two children playing on the playground, and you hear those wonderful voices of kids, and you see the open eyes and the wonder that they view everything with, and you look at them and you think, where will they be? Where will they go? And you can't help but think wonderful thoughts about them. As you get a little closer, you recognize that one of them has skin about the color of mine, and another one has skin that's a little darker. And the reason I raise that is because there is a very sad and I think shocking fact about this community and about this country, that when you look at those kids and you predict their chance of success, in this country, in the United States of America, in this day and age, you can still predict that one is more likely to succeed because of the color of their skin. And that is the shocking, sad fact of race in America today. And if that isn't a hard enough thing to swallow, I want you to recognize that there is no other community in the United States of America that has a bigger gap between the options of opportunity on kids of color than right here. There is no other city where it's more likely that you can predict the success of a child by looking at the color of their skin. That is not the Minnesota that I know. That is not the Minnesota we want to be part of. And that is not the Minnesota that I believe we will be in a few years. So with that horrible start, I want to give you exactly the opposite way of looking at that. You know what they always say about genius means being able to hold two completely contradictory ideas in your brain at the same time? Take that horrible thing that I just said and now recognize that that also is the root of the greatest opportunity this community has ever had. Because of our compassion, because we've been a humanitarian center for so long, we welcome people from all over the globe. And now we're raising a generation that is more globally savvy than any we've had. Populations that have been here for generations are also part of that because they cross barriers every day. The child in North Minneapolis, who may be an African-American boy who hops on the bus and goes to Southwest and then goes to their summer job downtown, crosses cultures 3 or 4 times throughout the day, that also happens to be the greatest skill you need in a global environment, in an incredibly diverse place. What we have, really, is a new world where every child has an achievement gap. The child who is in a completely majority culture, who isn't used to dealing with people different than them, needs to be able to deal with different cultures. And so what we have in this very, very much more diverse place is an opportunity to take our biggest deficit and turn it into our biggest asset. When you really look at that and you see that a child growing up today on that playground has that challenge, they also have an asset. There is no community in the United States of America where it is more likely that that child on that playground can meet a person who may speak another language, who may come from another culture, and by growing up in that way, they can be far more successful. So why do we have this huge achievement gap? What can we do about it? It's not because we lack compassion. This is the #1 volunteer community in America. Millions and millions of dollars go into efforts, and gosh knows in this room, enormous amount of volunteer activity goes in. We do not lack compassion, but we do lack alignment. We lack the ability right now to take that issue and focus our resources in a smarter way. I liken it a lot to a log jam, and I have never been on a log jam or unclogged a log jam, but I read about it in a book one time, okay? And the way if you think about all these logs coming down river, and they're all lined up for about a mile, the way you don't unclog a log jam is to just get a huge boat and try to shove it. All those logs will bunch up against each other. But if instead what you do with a log jam is you look for something called a key log. What is that 1 or 2 or 4 or 5 logs you can move that then begin to get the current behind the logs and all of them aligned together? Now, why am I talking to you about log jams when we're talking about kids? We have a log jam of compassion in this community, all these multiple initiatives that are so wonderful and helpful. What we need to do is to get smarter and more aligned. And so that's what my group does. We've brought together all the large foundations in this community and lots of different businesses, the superintendents of schools, the mayors, the county people, the volunteers, 500 different organizations, and we said, what are those key logs that we need to do in each of these areas? We laid out 5 very simple goals. Have every child ready for kindergarten, reading by 3rd grade, mastering math by 8th grade, graduating from high school and college. And we said we don't have to do everything, but what's missing? In early childhood, getting those kids ready for school, incredible things happen in this community. But when we brought people together, we said the biggest thing we have to do is to identify issues early. We do that with prenatal screening well, and we screen very well in the doctor's office before school, but we're not screening kids at 3 years old. So then my group goes into the weeds and does that deep work, and they see that a young kid who wasn't doing well at 3, they were screened, they found out they have a speech impediment, they got therapy, and the child started kindergarten at grade. Now think there are 8,000 kids just in Minneapolis-St. Paul alone, every year, disproportionately kids of color, who are not screened. If we can screen them and move them forward, they can start kindergarten earlier. That little thing affecting thousands of kids will not in itself close the achievement gap, but it's one of those logs. We do that in reading when we stand and look at that. How many of you have ever read to a kid in a classroom? Hands? Right. Now, do you believe that every single one of you was probably handed that book with tremendous training and gotten the best practices and woven in with the teacher? Maybe some of you would be, but I bet some of you were handed a book and said, here, go read to a kid without any background, right? Wouldn't it be amazing if all of you in the room had the exact same knowledge based on the knowledge of every person who's doing that work and we were all coordinated with the schools? That's what we're doing. We brought the 12 biggest tutoring organizations together, and they're developing a common protocol. And now in a few months, we're going to come back to places like Joan of Arc and say, we need you to go read, but we need this to do this smarter and more strategic. And we're doing that with mentors, and we're doing that in math, and we're doing that in a way that's going to be structural and strategic. And I could go on more about the policy here, but in a couple minutes I have left, I want to really talk to you not just about the policy, but as people of faith. Along with this strategic work we're doing, we need to change our mindset about the way we look at race in this community. It is about compassion. It is about the fact that something is deeply, deeply wrong. But it is also about the fact that now, on the brink of a very different world, a far more diverse world, we all need each other. We all have said that, but have we really understood and needed that? Unless we figure out a way for Target to sell to diverse people, for 3M to go around the globe and deal with people who are different than them, we will not succeed. So we need to look at the deficit but the asset of this diverse population. When you send a delegation to Africa, you are part of the greatest humanitarian area in the United States. Thank God, and I mean that you are sending people to Africa to help. We also need to recognize within this community, students who are in the schools right now speak all the languages of Africa. They will also power us in not only our business, but there will be no community better able to give humanitarian help to Africa than right here, because of those kids who originally came from the continent and because they sit next to your kids. We need to look at race in a different way. I believe as a Christian, when we do that, I was raised to say that it is important to reach out to someone and help. But I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying it is important to recognize this is not about saying, let's take this population and bring them up to where that population is. I am saying we all need to move to a new place where race and culture are our asset. And no community sits at that precipice more than we do, and no part of this community more than you do. So I want you to say how much I appreciate being here. And I want you all to say, also to know, I'm going to come back and ask you a big thing. It may mean to get all of you to read or to mentor or in some way. But what I want you to do is, learning about that, is follow us at Generation Next. Go on our email list, send me an email at rtrybak@gmail. But more than anything else, I ask you to do exactly what you have always done. I want you to go into a community, look at a great need, look at the greatest challenge we have ever had, and recognize that this one we will win. This one we will win not by saying we are just about helping other people who need help, but about saying that you and I, each in our own way, are walking into a much better future exactly because of the kids in this community. I want to leave with the fact that when I go into schools, I ask kids, how many of you speak a language other than English? And hands go up, 2 or more, 3 or more. How many of you were born in a foreign country? And hands go up. And then the biggest laugh line I can ever give to a kid in a Minneapolis or St. Paul school is, how many of you know someone born in a foreign country? And they laugh. Because everyone does, many, many. What would that answer have been when you were in school? Stop and think about what we have. And now recognize that as we look at people in need, we should look them in the eye and say, I need you. Thank you very much.